Chirping outside. Yes. I'm like thinking there's these woodland critters outside thinking, yes, these people inside are talking about us today. So we'll continue. This is an excerpt from The Souls of All Animals by Unitarian minister Gary Kowalski. Before they can be numbed and desensitized, young people have a keen empathy with the suffering of other species. Abundant evidence confirms this. A biographer tells us that when Abraham Lincoln was a boy, he once shot a wild turkey with his father's rifle. It was Abe's first encounter with hunting and also his last, for he never felt like pulling the trigger after that. Clara Barton, who went on to found the American Red Cross, relates that as a young girl, she once witnessed a cow being slaughtered on the family farm. At the precise moment the hired hand brought the heavy axe down on the cow's skull, Clara felt a blow to her own head and lost consciousness. When she woke up, she became a vegetarian and never willingly ate meat again. What such stories suggest is that compassion is not a quality that needs to be learned. Rather, it's cruelty that must be cultivated and encouraged, as tender feelings are slowly calloused and hardened. Over time, however, most of us lose our innate sympathy. From parents and elders, from church and school, we learn the lesson that only one species on Earth really matters, and that people who care about animals are sentimental, irrational, or misinformed. Animals, we are told, have no feelings. They have no souls. They have no significance in and of themselves, but exist only to serve and satisfy human wishes. We deny the inner wisdom we possessed as children. We suppress our intuitive feelings of reverence and relatedness. And this denial is what enables us to use and exploit animals as research tools, as commodities, as resources. It explains how so many people accept as normal a diet and lifestyle that demands the needless suffering of countless other creatures. One animal in pain or distress, be it a dolphin, a dog, or a wounded bird, is something we can understand viscerally. We respond with the urgency that's needed. This in itself seems to be part of our instinctive repertoire. In recovering the primordial knowledge that all life is sacred, we may not only manage to save our world, we might save our own souls as well. In learning how to peacefully coexist with other species, we might also find peace within. When we relate to one another, as a thing, our experience is flat and lacking depth. We never really share ourselves. We touch on surfaces alone. When we relate to others as spiritual beings, our experience opens up into a vertical dimension that stretches toward infinity. Our world becomes softer and more intimate. The living world is responsive and charged with feeling, which flows like a sympathetic current between all sentient beings. They share with us a heart and a mind and soul. One might say that we dehumanize animals, but this wouldn't be accurate since animals are not human. Rather, we desacralize animals. We rob them of their holy qualities. And in the process, we dehumanize ourselves. For animals cannot be relegated to the status of an object. When we treat them as if they were mere biological machines, collections of conditioned reflexes, we injure both their nature and our own.
So I currently live with two amazing, beautiful, smart, and loving cats. And growing up, I shared my home with multiple dogs, more cats, horses, goats, fish, bunnies, and even peacocks. And as I'm sure many of you can relate, anytime that we lost one of them, we were totally devastated. And we even had a little pet cemetery up behind our home where we honored them. Companion animals like these are part of our families. We care for them, and they care for us. And we can look into their eyes, and for many of us, it's quite clear that they're much more than a cute, furry creature with a meaningless existence. We know when they're sad, and we can hear them howl when they're in pain. My very best friend from the time I was 6 to 16 walked on 4 legs. His name was Ozzy. And without the experience of his love and loyalty, I honestly don't know what type of person I would have turned into. And I think a lot of us can relate to having some sort of special relationship with an animal in our life. I've got a lot of fond memories from when I was a child with my father, who passed away when I was 12. And as often as I can remember, he would take me and Ozzy out fishing on this quiet lake where there was hardly another human being. This was a tradition of ours. And when I first started the process of shifting to a vegan lifestyle, I really struggled with letting go of this. It was something I'd always been able to do where I could feel connected to both my father and my dog. Traditions are a huge part of our culture, and the way that each of us leaves room to reflect on our own history in our own ways. We anticipate holidays like Thanksgiving. We try to recreate memories of our past by making our mashed potatoes just like our grandmothers do. But rarely do we question our traditions, often seeing them as the way that it is. One of my favorite Buddhist quotes says, "Do not believe in anything simply because you have heard it. Do not believe in anything simply because it is found written in your religious books. Do not believe in traditions because they have been handed down for many generations. But after observation and analysis, when you find that anything agrees with reason and is conducive to the good and benefit of one and all, then accept it and live up to it." We've been taught and we've learned a lot of things that aren't entirely right. We were taught that Columbus discovered America, but we now know that what he actually discovered was a thriving civilization that was just different from us. Due to historical norms in the media, most people in our society learn that it's a woman's job to do the cooking and the cleaning and take care of the children, even though that we know that women are actually just, if not way more, capable than men in every other aspect of living. So we've learned many things, but that doesn't make them okay. And in order for us as humans to evolve, and in order for us to change, we'll inevitably have to let go of some parts of our culture that don't align with our values. And that's going to require some reflection. It's going to require acknowledging the things that we are doing that may not be in line with our morals. Audre Lorde once wrote, "The true focus of revolutionary change is never merely the oppressive situations that we seek to escape, but that piece of the oppressor which is planted deep within each of us." What's happened up until now can't be reversed. We can't rewrite our history or change things that we were told, but we can learn new truths and we can grow. The First Principle Project asks that we acknowledge the fact that all beings, dogs, fish, humans, elephants, frogs, have inherent worth and dignity. One question that the youth pushing for this change pose is, how might considering that all beings do have inherent worth and dignity nurture you and help you connect to others, the earth, and to life? For Steph and I, widening our circle of compassion broadened our connection to everything, especially to ourselves. It prompted me to unveil truths about myself that I hadn't been able to consider before. I feel like the ideal of what most of us want for ourselves and others is to be authentic and honest about what's important. We want to be true to our values. Doing so doesn't always come easy, but it can definitely be an awakening. I think that there's this wall that exists between the things that we're okay with and the things that we don't want to know. And it can be as simple as not wanting to know what time it is when you know that you stayed up too late, or it can be as complex as not wanting to hear someone move while you're eating a hamburger. And I'm not trying to ignore the fact that staying on one side of the wall can make for a much easier life. What I'm saying is that there is a benefit to reaching beyond that wall, not just for the animals and the planet, but for us as humans in our journey to grow. Most of us were raised to distance the idea of animals from the food that we put in our mouths. We make it easier to swallow by calling a pig pork or a cow beef. The image of the American farmer with their red barns and their idyllic pastures and their blue overalls and their happy cows are shown in advertising to make it look like there's no reason to break through any wall. And look, I come from a long line of dairy farmers, and I spent many, many hours listening to my mom tell stories about her life growing up on the farm. Not every farm uses the methods of torture that many folks have seen in these undercover videos online. Where I come from, you can drive down the road and you pass by pastures filled with beautiful cows. But even in those scenarios, the animal is considered a product. They're considered a thing that is owned. And I wonder how owning another life fits into our values as you use. And what I can't wrap my head around is the fact that humans, who are inarguably not perfect, think that we have the right to control another being. It's that control and that need for power that leads to the destruction of compassion for all. And it inhibits us from leading a life of love. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s letters from Birmingham jail, he wrote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly, affects all indirectly." Now, if he had been allowed to live out his life, would he have extended his beliefs to animals? We can't say. But his wife went on to be a vegan, and their son Dexter is a passionate animal activist. Dexter Scott King is quoted as saying, "If you're violent to yourself by putting harmful things into your body that violate its spirit, it will be difficult not to perpetuate that violence onto someone else." Some people will draw the line of compassion between their own species and others. The First Principle Project pushes us to question, how might erasing the line between those with worth and dignity and those without, in human perception, help you live and care for others who are different from you? Now, I know most people here live with or have lived with animals in their lifetime, and I'm going to guess that those have been predominantly cats and dogs. And many of you would protect the hearts and health of those animals by any means necessary. And often when you hear about Chinese dog-eating festivals, a surge of outrage follows. When Cecil the lion was hunted down, the whole world raised their voices in anger. Animal abuse is definitely not something that we see as okay. But let me ask you, what is the difference between that dog or that lion and the life of a pig or a cow? Was it just bad luck that a smart and affectionate soul was born into the body of a cow that would unfortunately have to spend her life being used for her body? As a feminist, it doesn't sit right with me that in order for milk to be made, a female cow must spend the entirety of her short life locked in an endless cycle of pregnancy, without being able to cherish the lives of her babies. A family is a family. And if we're heartbroken when a child is separated from their parent, why does that hurt stop at humans? The truth is that I don't think that any of us want any type of family to be separated. And by eating dairy, we just simply aren't thinking about it as a family, but rather something that tastes good. And I could, but I won't, go into a lot more detail about the impacts of supply and demand on the bodies of these beautiful souls. But what I want to convey, and what I want to inspire in you, is to see these beings not as things that can be owned, but as a part of us. As a part of this interconnected web we all are a part of. When one of us is harmed, we all are in a sense. Participating in anything that endangers the growth of love is a step in the wrong direction if we want to create a just and loving world. I was thinking about our mission statement and how it starts, inspired by love. And I was like, okay, I should be looking for love in the world. That's going to really help me progress in my journey. But after reflection, maybe I shouldn't be looking for love. Maybe I should be living a life of love and inspiring others in the process. And some people might disagree, but I don't believe that we can truly experience love with a closed-off heart. And I also don't think it's right for me to pick and choose what's convenient with what my heart should or shouldn't be open to. In recent years, our congregation and our country at large has done a lot of work to try to understand the role each of us plays in the systems of oppression within our nation. As a white person, I know that the privilege I've been gifted is a direct reflection of the oppression faced by black and brown people. And our country cannot make changes without that acknowledgement. As Unitarian Universalists, we all firmly believe in the abolition of slavery. But take a moment and imagine the conversations had in UU congregations back in the 1800s. Do you think that there weren't nice white UUs trying to defend it? Possibly saying things like, oh, but I just have a house slave and I'm very nice to them. There is a resistance to change even in progressive communities. And we can see hints of this in UU writings from that time. As part of our faith, we're asked to look at how we live our lives, even when it doesn't suit our desire for an easy existence. And I challenge us to ask ourselves, would we rather live according to our desires or according to our values? I value love. I cherish the interconnected web for which we're all a part. I believe that the cosmos are within us and that we all come from star stuff. You, me, the waves on the beach, the trees, the dog that you just adopted, the cat that you lived with for years, the pig crowded in the back of a truck, and the calf taken from his mother so that she may save her milk for cheese. This sanctuary is not a place to talk about the details of animal agriculture, but I hope we can agree that owning a soul capable of emotion and love with the purpose of exploitation does not align with the compassion that we aspire to live our lives with. And yet still, this is our tradition. I'm sure you've heard and likely used terms like, they're acting like animals, or they treated me like an animal. These phrases can be interpreted into a message that animals are less than, and that it is usual to treat them poorly. And in those statements, there's acknowledgement that a human doesn't want to be treated like an animal. Our language is filled with sayings that inflate the oppression. Like when someone says, you're a pig, or he's such a dog. When I hear these, I say, thank you. People see this as an insult. It's a way in which even our language enforces the oppression of animals. Intersectional veganism is a social justice movement that seeks to upend the systems of government and culture that keep oppressed groups down and continue a false us versus them narrative. Being a vegan isn't a form of dietary restraint. It's a choice about what we allow to enter our bodies and how we live out our values through our money. So when a joke gets made, as they often do, it's not just a lighthearted dig about food. It's making fun of a belief system and a person's morals. Veganism is a form of protest, of boycotting, it's a form of intense love, and it's a new language and a new way to view the world around us. People often imply that going vegan isn't going to make a difference. But veganism is a rapidly growing movement, from just a few million in the early 90s to almost 950 million people last year. There's this cool website called vegancalculator.com, and according to them, for every month that one person doesn't participate in animal agriculture, you save 600 pounds of CO2, 900 square feet of rainforest, 1,200 pounds of grain, 33,000 gallons of water, and 30 animal lives. One person can do that in 1 month. The First Principle Project asks that we take the first step forward. Acknowledge that non-human animals are deserving of love and that they have worth and dignity. There's no room in growth to dwell on shame from the things that we have done. We just need to learn and evolve, surrounding ourselves, participating in, and honoring love. Maya Angelou once said, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. Please rise and body your spirit for our closing hymn, number 105-3 in your teal hymn books. Outstanding.